think what we'll do is read start at the first Beatitude, verse 3, and we'll just read 4 of them, because I think they make a flow. So, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. So I have a ton of things I want to say, and I'll probably try not to say all of them. We've done so much with these, so I know you guys have heard a lot about the first 2 already and how it lays a foundation. So just think, we're not going to talk about meekness yet. Let's talk about that in just a moment, but let's skip to the next one, hungering and thirsting for righteousness, which means holiness, which means God. And just see how the first 3 Beatitudes set a person up to be able to hunger and thirst for righteousness. Like, think about this. Isn't it true that you can't think about God all day, even if you say you're going to get up and do it? Don't you end up thinking about yourself and problems and troubles and your own desires and what you want out of life and what you don't want out of life? Aren't our concerns almost entirely based on self? So you see why the 4th Beatitude would be the freedom to hunger and thirst for holiness, because something has died. If you have the first 3 Beatitudes, something quite profound has died and made you free to be able to choose God. And I don't want to belabor this point, but think of it this way also. Until the first night has happened to a person, aren't they almost entirely wrapped up in their own issues also? Even if you wanted to be free to seek God, it's like, yes, I'm seeking God so you can free me from all this pain and all this trouble, all this suffering. So the first 3 Beatitudes, it all starts with poverty of spirit, this deep sense of emptiness, of not having enough, not having what it takes, not knowing the way, not having, you have a child born to you, or you're given a job, and you don't have what it takes to do it. And poverty of spirit, it's like this quality that allows us to lean towards God for those things we don't have, which is kind of everything. It's everything. I can do any action that my life requires of me without God. Seems like I can get up and I can cook breakfast for my daughter and take her to school. But if my daughter is going to feel blessed by the time I take her to school, if she's going to feel deeply loved, valued, heard, if she's going to have joy by the time we get there, I can't do that without God. I need God's power to bring her to that place. I need to be a vessel for God's power to bring her to that place. I can get the things done, but there can be grumpiness in it. Right? Because then I get enough sleep. You're bugging me. There's a way to get that girl out the door where the beginning of her day has felt like a blessing. But that I can't do without God. And when I look at her and look her in the eyes, it doesn't take a lot. I'm not trying to say I'm a great parent either, because I think I'm not. I do energy work every night to erase the trouble I cause. So I'm certainly not trying to make it sound like, do follow me. But there just is something that I could do with her if I need God and I'm open to God and I'm serious about that. And when I first had her, That was a half hour to an hour of prayer before I got her up. Please let me be selfless. Let me be a channel for you. I don't know how. Let every day be a blessing that she's in my life. I can't do that without God. So I can do lots of things without God, but I can't do anything right or well without God. Right? That's the thing. It's about how our action is imbued with God's power. And that only a person who's willing to set aside their own will, set aside their own desires, right? Only a person who's willing to put all that away can do that. And I'm saying my child, but it doesn't need to be that. It doesn't have to be that at all, does it? If you're a massage therapist, it's your massage. You can do the physical movements without God. But are they going to leave blessed? So think about poverty of spirit. I, on my own, am not enough. It's not a character defect even. I was designed to work with God. The character defect is ever thinking I should be enough on my own. That's the character defect, pride. So that's that foundation, right? That my root is in God. I don't have a root in myself. And on my own, apart from God, I can do nothing correctly. I can do nothing well. And then that second, we've already said all this, but it builds, And so tonight's like the culmination of a certain build within the Beatitudes. So then the second one, mourning. What am I mourning? Well, I'm mourning everything that gets in the way of me being able to be poverty of spirit. I come to this awakening with God. I want to give you my life. All right, I'm going to be holy in like 3 years, and then you find out, like I remember Raya feeling sorry for me that I wasn't already enlightened. She's just getting started. She's like, man, I'm a poor guy, but then try it for a few years. You find out there's a lot in the way. It's not as easy as you think. There's a lot there. And I've felt that from a lot of people that are new. It's like, oh man, I'll listen, but I'm not going to take that long. And it's like, well, we'll see. I hope not, but we'll see. Not as easy as you think. The mourning of all the mistakes we make, of all the attitudes we don't shed when we could shed them, or that we can't shed when we wish we could. Because we're not there yet. That constant, repentance. Jesus said if you love your life in this life, you will lose it in heaven. But if you hate your life here, you will love it. If you lose it here, you'll get it. So all these weird twists that he says. Why? Because you have to be just kind of on one level disgusted with the way you are. It's just the way it's got to be. Not in a way that hurts your self-esteem, but in a way that kills pride and false self-esteem. So that's that, we've already gone over it. I won't go over it endlessly, but that's that mourning. So now you've got no foundation in yourself. You have a profound need for God, and you're constantly aware of all these ways in which you're, not. My daughter had, parent-teacher conference, and one teacher said we would like her to be a little more confident. So I don't teach confidence. Like, what the hell am I going to say? I don't know what to say. I think, I don't know what to say, so I'm certainly not saying anything tonight because I don't know what I'm doing. So I got to take some time here and think, what the heavens am I going to say to this girl about confidence when it's not even something I teach, or really, I don't know. But then, and then, it's my daughter, and so, like, she's not as messed up as me already because she's just had a better start, and, what am I going to tell her? Tricky business is what I'm saying. Meekness and poverty of spirit have you go into things a little hesitant, prayerful, because we don't know what's best. We don't, and we should pray and want to know what God's will is to do well. So it ended up being about miracles. It ended up being about belief, and how when you believe something, when you don't rely on your own power and you rely on God's power, how the way you are now, you can be twice that, just by believing that and knowing that. So the whole talk ended up being about miracles, really. Positive talk on the way to school. She left happy. Not, hey, you need to be more confident, buck up. You know, what my dad would have said, suck that gut in, boy. You know, it's like, whoa, man. You know, it's got to be done right and well so it's happy. You know? That kind of stuff. Hesitant, careful. So meekness, let's think of meekness. It is a state of being, but it's almost at the point at which it's a state of being. But it's almost a point at which that state of being becomes action. Meekness are people who do God's will and not their own. You have to think of it that way. That could look like violence against someone who's going to harm somebody. Meekness isn't weakness. I read an article once on it that said it's just got a bad rap in English because it rhymes with weak. It's like, that's it. That was enough to get everyone's head twisted about it. If somebody is timid and hides all the time, the only way they could be meek is to stand up and show up and not hide. Right? Meekness is going into a situation and doing God's will, not your own. A person who is meek is interested in God's will and not their own. That's what meekness is. And you know, that's for my personality type, it's a rougher one because in heart and mind I'm all in. But the physical stuff's hard, so we'll get to that. So think of meekness that way. It's the point at which this poverty of spirit and mourning becomes doing, and doing God's will. And it's often the same activity done in a different state of consciousness because God isn't just interested in what we do. You know, my dad was, pretty abusive, but I always had a roof over my head. He never missed breakfast. So what about all that energy involved in it? What about that? It's the difference between showing up as a blessing in someone's life and not. Even if you do the exact same physical thing and say the same things. It's that quality. Teresa of Avila said, one good act done by a saint is worth more than 1,000 good acts done by someone who isn't a saint. Because that one good act is powerful. It's filled with power. It touches someone more deeply. It changes things more deeply. Interestingly, just a side note, there's only two people the Bible refers to as meek. The Bible doesn't say no one else is meek. It just says, hey, these guys were meek. Moses and Jesus. It's the only other two places that word was used to describe a person. So think about that. It's a high thing. It's a balance between extremes. That's what you have to understand. Because, as a guy, I'm really trying to correct this. Over the last 3 years, I've really been just aware that whenever I talk about the principles, it's usually knocking the guy down to where it needs to be. And I don't call me sexist. I'm tiptoeing. I'm so worried in this climate what to say. A lot of women got to come the other direction to the same principle. So think of it in this way. And I know there's differences, and there's some women that are, Mary's the man in this family, in our family, in a lot of ways. But I'm just trying my best to try to, not make it all about the overly aggressive person has to come down to some Christian truth. A lot of people got to come up to it from somewhere else also. So think of it as a balance of extremes. Acting with anger isn't meek, but neither is not acting because of cowardice. Right? Both of those, anger, that would be my style. Too angry, too pushy, whatever. Calm down. Get down to God's will before you talk. You're going to ruin it if you don't. But someone else is not going to talk if they don't come up to meekness. They're not going to stand up for themselves. They're not going to set a boundary. Right? They're going to fail to do God's will in a different way. In a different way. So another extreme, these are just tiny examples, recklessness. Right? Just reckless action. As opposed to someone who's too careful in their action. Right? We're just trying to find, where is God? I love the Grateful Dead. Jerry Garcia died. They replaced him with this guy that is literally a recovering egomaniac. It's actually true. I'm not saying that. He is a recovering guy. And they said, yeah, he's really good on guitar. So they tell him, take a guitar solo. Take a long guitar solo. But don't take too long of a guitar solo. Really play it up, but don't play it up too much. And he said coming in to play with the Dead was like this crazy thing where they're yes and no, and yeah, do that, but don't do too much of that. Because it's like they found this meekness. What the Grateful Dead were good at is playing God's will. That's what they were really good at. So there's a guitar solo, but it's not too many notes. And it's kind of long, but it's not too long. But it's also not there. It's not... The person shows, they got to show up, but don't show up too much. And he was told all this stuff that seemed impossible, he said. And in my opinion, turned out long term to be impossible for him. He can't do it. He can play too many notes, he can sure do that. But he can't play just the right amount of notes. There's ego driving it. Meekness it's like that. It's like, where is that exact place where it's God? Where is that? And a person who is meek is trying to find that when they're doing things. And trying to find that when they're deciding whether or not to do things. They're looking for where is the power in it. And it's super tricky. It's tricky. Mostly, though, because we're filled with agenda. Aversions. The word meek in Greek, I don't know the Greek word, but what it means in Greek, it refers to a tamed animal. An animal that was wild, that can now focus all of its energies to its purpose. So it can be really powerful, but it's powerful in God's will. A person who is meek slows down. It's not like, you can't do anything quick when you're meek. It's just that you're just like, but am I doing God's will? I'm going to have this talk with my friend or my coworker or something, and I want to do it well, and so all these reasons why I can't do it well for sure, but I'm going to try to do it as good as I can, and just let me be careful. Let me find a way for it to be God's will. And, I do Tai Chi still, actually, and it's like I've got to just move my hand from here to here. That's all I got to do. I don't need God for that. Just got to do that. That's it. But, if my hand is surrounded in power or not, cloud of light while I'm doing it depends entirely on meekness. Entirely. That quality of it and being imbued with power is entirely about meekness. Not being ahead or behind it. Kind of already said this, but it's really all about, wanting to be doing God's will. That's what it's about. It's about wanting that. Okay, we already said that. Good. This is not going to take very long. Okay. If you need to set a boundary and you won't because you're afraid, it isn't meek. That's not meek. If you're harping on someone all the time and you're just all the time setting boundaries and it ain't God telling you to do it, that's not meek either. So kind of some courage in there, huh? To do God's will, which is sometimes very uncomfortable, I think, in this culture. You know? Just when I stopped looking at women and objectifying them verbally was a problem for some of the people I hung out with. Now, what's the matter with you? What, you're too good for that? What's it? It's like, I just don't want to objectify people anymore. I'm not trying to make a big deal out of it, but I just would rather not objectify that person. You know, the whole endless freaking cultural clash right there. Just for standing up to a pretty low minimum, a pretty low bar. It's not asking a lot, right? Pretty low bar. But try that for real and see, you know, now no one I hang out with is like that. But at the time when you're breaking away, you know, it's different. In its resting state, I think meekness is mostly poverty of spirit and holy sorrow. I think it's mostly poverty and mourning. It's definitely a readiness, sort of an alertness to God's will. I think it's in its resting state. You could be meek just sitting in a room. You wouldn't be doing anything, so you couldn't tell. But a person that's in the resting state of meekness has poverty of spirit, has mourning, even if it's just a subtle kind, and is at the ready to do God's will, which might be sitting still. Most of this turns out to be redundant, so I had like 5 pages. I'm so glad it won't be like that today. My wife and I, one of the things we've always done, even way before we had Cassidy, was just go to the mountains and go walking. But we don't take trails. We used to wear moccasins so you didn't damage anything, and we just kind of like tiptoe through the forest. We don't like to hike. We don't have a goal. Because the goal says, this is what I'm going to do today, and I don't know how much God is in there. So I'm going to get to that peak. Okay, but does God want you at that peak? I don't know. So we'd get in the forest and we'd walk and we'd sort of follow energy. We'd just try to find the flow of what's what. And, you know, we'd find cool animals and like it leads you to these secret things that you don't see otherwise. It's really neat. But we will sometimes take rocks home, but we'd ask, is it okay to take the rock? Because, you know, what if the rock doesn't want to come out of the mountains into your yard? And this is kind of going to be a joke, but now that we have Cassidy, the answer is no a lot more often than it was with us. Apparently she's more sensitive to whether a rock really wants to come back or not, because it's no a lot. So we don't take it. If anyone in the group thinks it wants to stay, we don't take it. But there's these rocks we've said, I want to take that one. It feels like I could take that home. And it's like a nice domey looking rock, you know, and you go to grab it and it won't move because there's like 8 feet underground, right? There's a lot of rocks like that. You think you're going to take them home and you're not taking that rock home. It's not going to happen. If it wanted to go, it doesn't get to go. I think a person that is meek is like that rock. Most of them is embedded deep in the ground. Deep in God. Their will is in God. Their approval that they seek is in God. The principles that they are living upon and thinking about are in God. And nobody's moving them. They're not, and I feel that. I feel from the night, I never used to feel this way. If you guys knew me before the night, I was profoundly and exceptionally ungrounded. And I'm not now. I'm genuine. And I try, I did Tai Chi every day and I visualized the roots. And no ground came. And I don't think astrology is legitimate, but if it's a little true, my chart has no root. There should be no ground. And so there was just no ground. But then getting in Christ, I got super grounded. And I do feel like that. I feel like in the world, when I have to stand for something that's right and I know it's going to cause trouble, I just feel an immovable thing there. I feel like I'm that rock. I feel like this is what's true, and this is what it's going to be. Because it's true, and you can fight and accuse and get angry and do anything you want. But I'm not going to budge from this because it's true. I think meekness is a little like that. And that's like with Jesus, they're going to kill him if he won't shut up, but he doesn't shut up. And then with Pilate, they're going to kill him if he won't talk. They're going to kill him unless he talks. And he doesn't talk. They're going to kill him if he makes a whip out of cords and drives all the people out of the temple that are ripping people off. But he doesn't. He makes a whip out of cords and becomes scary. I think that's all meekness. The other area I just wanted to cover in a sort of a way for this group is, like, we're contemplatives, so contemplatives are typically not preachers. They can be. They're more likely to be teachers. And they're not necessarily sort of like the evangelical type that's going to knock on your door and try to convert you. You know what I mean? It's just not the vibe. And then also that's kind of been done in a way that isn't meek for so long that it's kind of an automatic turnoff to people anyway, because it just reeks of a lot of arrogance and pride and tactics, like people actually train sales tactics, convert people to Christianity, and that seems cheap and terrible and just a lot of problems, So, but contemplatives can become so not meek. They don't stand up for it in social circles when they ought. And they don't tell the truth about it when they ought. And I was going to make this, I was going to say this thing that Jesus said. Super harsh, man. And, it's caveat after caveat. Take it easy, But he said, if you deny me before others, I'll deny you in heaven. Now, you're going to heaven, man. If you deny him, it's okay. But he's talking about something, isn't he? Something really important. Which is, here you are, you got Christ on the planet. And it's real. It's changing your life in profound ways that if people knew they would want. If they knew what it was here, they would want it. Some of whom might die because they don't find it or kill themselves. Is it meek to be afraid to say it so that you could fit in a little better socially? Or is it meek to be so afraid of a little bit of anger that might come up that you don't want to talk about it? I was too much like that for a long time, and I'm not now. I actually love to discuss it with people, and I don't insist someone believes. But I absolutely insist that if we're going to have a discussion, they know what it really is. And not what they think it is. Because those are not the same ever. It's okay if you don't come this way, but just make sure you know what this way is. It's kind of my thing, more of a teacher than a preacher that way. I did feel ashamed of Jesus in public sometimes in the past. I was afraid to say it. That's got to get cured if you have that. Each of you has some miracle, some level of genuine miracle you can speak about that's real. Probably almost everything. Yeah. And then just the last thing, and the most important for us, meekness is listening for God's presence and allowing ourselves to be the way God is being in us. And that is of primary importance. In if it's holy sorrow, it's holy sorrow. Believe it or not, just gentleness was something I had an aversion to. I wouldn't listen. Just, you want me to be powerful, I'll be powerful. You want me to be cosmic, I'm in. But when they shine gentle energy on me for a number of years straight, it bugged me, man. It went against how I saw myself as a man. It went against it. And it didn't suit my ego, because the gentleness didn't make me seem, especially in the new age, like you meet someone and you got to let them know you're bright. I mean, you're freaking bright. And you got to bring that brightness, man, and be bright. And they started shining gentleness, and then no one noticed anymore. And I didn't like that. I could be bright if I wanted, but it was self-will, So think of meekness primarily as this listening for God and wanting to hear that energy and be the way it is being. And I thought that someone might try it and feel repulsed or annoyed. Yes, it's true that if you sit down to do that and you've been in self, it might take 15 minutes to start to show up. It's true. If you've just been wrapped up in self and you sit down and say, okay, well, how do you really want me to be? Nothing. And God doesn't say anything, so let's go, Whoa, slow down, man. Don't close your eyes. Leave them open. Hang out and say, I'm waiting on you, God. Show me the way today. And you're just looking for, subtle. It's not a message, because now we're become like these false prophets and false gurus. It's not a message. It's just, hey man, I'm letting go of self. I'm trying to be like, just a cotton, just like a dandelion floater in the sky. Just blow me wherever you want to blow me. Just let me loosen up. Put me where you want me. And if you listen like that, you feel a presence, a subtle presence that comes. Then you're in God's will. And that's developmental. That goes on for years. And that's what pulls you through these stages of initiation. That's what pulls you through the Beatitudes. Because God will shine low energy on you and you'll just get low if you're willing. God will shine holy sorrow and you'll catch that scent and you'll do holy sorrow. God will shine meekness and you'll stand up for yourself when you weren't. The very last thing, okay. It's a spectrum. And everybody in here has some meekness. Of course. Come on, of course. You show up for prayer every day and meditation every day because you know that's God's will for you. That's meekness. You do inventory. That's meekness. You already have it, and there's a lot more of it to have. And you could see how that complex stability of poverty and mourning and meekness sets one up to just want to go hang out in the trees with God and feel God's power. Or let your kids play and just watch them, but in God's power. Or do that massage, but in God's power. And that's what causes God to become so attractive and make you start to hunger and thirst for it. Very last thing, okay? If you have bad theology, meekness gets warped. Good theology is very important. Just going to give an example from this week. Someone I talked to I really love and respect is being so hard on themselves and not allowing themselves to play at all. And because, serious business. It's all serious business. And it is. It's all serious business. But God plays. Animals play. People play. Musicians play. Play is a part of life. So meekness is served by good theology. Protected by it. It's like guide rails for it. And then he said he viewed me as all the time very serious about God, and I thought, I better tell everyone this. Dude, I goof off a lot. I just need everyone to know. I'm dead serious sometimes. Yeah, man, I get so serious it's ridiculous sometimes. But we play a lot. It's part of it. I don't think you could be a healthy person if you're unable to play.